We are going into this second chapter of Into My Personal Reality. This often has been the theme of many of my workshops, and my inner process is that मैं ऐसा क्यों हूँ? And it is good to dance on that song. मैं ऐसा क्यों हूँ? मैं ऐसा क्यों हूँ? And to learn this process of nature of our personality, the topic that has come up today for us to reflect on is a very big issue for all human beings. And this issue is guilt. Guilt is one emotion which is a very difficult, painful emotion for a human being. So I'm going to share my screen and make a little bit of our presentation today. Okay, let me see if you can see my screen. One of the QLU members, please confirm if you are able to see my screen.
Yes, we can see, sir.
Thank you. So today is our journey within, from guilt to compassion, and into the nature of our personality or our personal reality, part 2. And this lecture is actually an essentially wisdom that was integrated from multiple sources. This feeling of being guilty, this feeling like being behind bars, is a very scary feeling for any human being. And most of us tend to experience this in some form or some color or the other in multiple situations in our lives. So first I want to thank dear doctors Lakshmi and Newton, my dearest gurus, for giving me this opportunity to share this wisdom. So we start with something very simple. That what is guilt? Guilt is a state of one who has committed an offense, especially consciously committed an offense. It takes a very prominent place in our mind. And then these feelings of deserving blame, and these feelings convert into imagination. Gradually, it becomes such a habit to imagine that you've done some offense, and then there is always an associated fright, and then you feel a sense of inadequacy, and then you feel reproach, self-reproach, you blame yourself, aisa kyun kiya? You have remorse, constantly blaming yourself, and then some shame is also a part of this whole phenomena. And this whole thing then becomes a pattern, this thing becomes a tendency. Guilt and fear have highest playback quality. What do you mean by playback quality? This replay of emotions. They create themselves again and again and again. And when you go for a therapy, or when you sit with the therapist, or when you sit with the master, when you reflect, then maybe you regress into times of your childhood, or you regressed beyond your life. The mind creates, recreates, further creates the same painful feelings of afsos, of remorse, of fear. And somehow, from all these species, human beings are kind of expert guilt manufacturing entities. I know from my own experience, I am sharing this. We all humans have a tendency to make the other guilty in order to manipulate the other into compliance. Think of this, friends, of this habit, of this tendency, of this pattern, of this instinct, of this nature to make the other feel guilty and get some advantage out of it, getting some compliance out of someone. Recognize this part of your nature. The elite, the powerful, the dominant, the so-called guardians often create a situation for the other to feel guilty and for the other to feel undeserving. And so everything depends upon where you are positioned. If you are positioned here on the top, then you can come down on the bottom and make that person very guilty. So it is very interesting to know what is your positioning. Fault finding, fault pointing is a very hard wired phenomena. You tend to find faults with your own self and you tend to find faults with the others. This is a very super speciality of a human being. So the first step is to identify the guilt patterns. Identify in your mind or write down. For what are we frequently blaming the other for? What is the frequent cause for your finding fault with somebody or some situation, some human? Often this person with whom you have a tendency to pick faults is a close family member, a friend, or a close associate. Strangers are somehow exempted, a little bit exempted from this. But what here I want to come to is recognize your judging mind and your intense sense of right and wrong. This part of our being, this part of our being is what needs to come to our consciousness because that is the most rigid part of our being. It is the unflexible part of our being. It's tight. It cannot move anyways. It is very well formed part of our mind. It is not compromising part of our mind. So this judgment creates numerous possibilities. And these possibilities range from, say, reprimanding or to harsh punishment, to being jailed, to being hanged, or rejected isolation. Rigidity of opinion is the key to such judgment mind. And the nature of this judgment mind is to justify. It will find multiple justifications for judging, justifying the judge. Observe your posture, your feelings, your body sensations when you are in a judging mode. Punish correct, manipulate, change, etc. is the objective. And here you will find very much the idea of perfectionism ties in. So take a minute. I'll give you a minute. Recognize that part of yours. This finger goes like this. Whether you do it to yourself or to your dear ones. That judging part, friends, we need to bring this to our consciousness. We want to be aware that, okay, this is one part of my way of being. So we will make a very short, I have made something very short for you, those who are not doctors or non-psychologists, to just understand that early 20th century in 1910 to 1900 to 1910 or 15, that was a time when Freud, the father of modern psychology, came up with this model. Freud's iceberg model, it was called. And I acknowledge Saul McLeod, a PhD, from whose work I have taken some of the insights today. Very beautiful work this person has put up on the web. I thank from my bottom of my heart. Just to bring it across to you, that the Freud is, put this idea mainly of the id. Id means primal instincts. We'll learn this a little bit later. So there is one id and there is one superego. Superego is full of moral compasses. What is right, what is wrong, how it should be, how it should not be, what should be done in what way, what is appropriate, what is correct, what is allowed, what is not allowed, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, what is punishable, what is not punishable, how much a punishment has to be given, what not has to be given. All this, all this moral compass is the superego. And id is that childlike being in you, and ego, what you use the word ego is not in that context here, but in the context of Freud, ego was a kind of a realistic mediator. Now, you can see here that the id is very much inside in the unconscious mind. It's inside here. And ego and the superego have little bit of consciousness and little bit of unconsciousness or subconsciousness. Okay, so let's see what comes up next. Okay, so this picture was also very illustrative of id being instincts, the libido, given the animal quality to it, and then superego is very demonic, and the ego is reality. So there is a conflict between the goals of the id and the superego. Id is primitive instinctual part that contains sexual aggressive drives, hidden memories. So many of us struggle with our sexual and aggressive drives, whether it be with work or with our partners or with our employees, or very highly driven. And asexuality is a very important part of this id instincts. And the id is one which is not logical. It is an illogical part of your mind. The id engages in primary process thinking, which is primitive, which is illogical, which is irrational, which is fantasy oriented. Fantasy oriented. So what does the id do? Say, for example, the id will say that I am going to wear today a red, pink, and a green fluorescent shirt because this red, green fluorescent shirt really looks sexy. It looks cool. It looks attractive. It looks like if I wear this kind of a shirt, my lecture will be attended by many more people. He will be called a cool young therapist. And people will be attracted to come and listen to me. And maybe more beautiful women may come. It's going to make me very popular. This red, pink, green shirt. Now, this is the primitive, illogical, rational, fantasy-oriented part of me. If I want to make it a little more realistic, I open the wardrobe and I choose this black shirt to wear. So I look in the mirror, I say, okay, I look good. I made my hair, I'm looking good. And what would a superego say, for example? The superego will say, black is evil. Black is upshukan. It is misfortune. It brings misfortune. Black is demonic. Black is ugly. The black is like dark. Black is like immoral. Black gives you an idea of a black hole. Black is like brings all kinds of problems for a person. Black is something which is never to be worn. Black is something which I know will take you into the deepest realms of hell. Remove this black for now. Can you see these two parts of your being? And this id operates on pleasure principle. 1920, Freud said this, that even unconscious wishful impulses be satisfied regardless of consequences. The id is impulsive and is unconscious part of our psyche that responds directly to immediate basic urges, basic needs, desires. And then it is said that the newborn child is completely id. And later on, it develops this ego and then superego. So when id is satisfied, then you experience pleasure. And when id is denied, you experience tension and displeasure. So, very interesting quote from Osho is every child around the earth in all societies is forced to renounce his being, is forced to accept the other's opinion about himself. Every child is born absolutely accepting himself the way he is. Each child is born with a lot of love for himself. He has self-love, self-respect because he is not yet a mind. So this concept was later on by Eric Berne in transactional analysis converted into parent, adult, and child phenomena, that the parent is the one who is lecturing, criticizing, giving advices, talks down, and also takes care of someone. And the child is submissing, complying, playful, impulsive, emotional, throws tantrums. All the fears are also seat of this child. All the vulnerabilities are the seat of this child. And then there is an objective, rational mind, which is the adult, which Freud called as ego. It asks for information. It treats people as equal. Most important, it treats people as equal. So the Freud's ego-rational part of the psyche mediates between the instinctual desires on one side and the constraints of the superego on the other side, and it tries to keep a conscious level. The ego develops from the id in in infancy, and the ego's main job is how to keep the id happy in a safe, socially acceptable way. In contrast to the id, the ego follows more realistic principle. It's more realistic. He works out a realistic, acceptable formula to satisfy the id's demand. So normally what would work is when you would have a situation where ego says, okay, guys, I'm in charge. Anything you want has to go through me. Id agrees, okay. Super ego agrees, okay. Everything is fine. But this is not what happens. In our lives, this part, the middle part is absent. There is only the id and the super ego, which are constantly talking to each other, and talking to the others also. So when this critical filter is absent, then all the time there is a conflict. You do something, and then your inner mind will say, no, this is not right. And then you will compromise and you will say, no, I've done something wrong. I've not done something right. I need to be punished. I'm guilty. And there is always a tension. Either you are in a super ego state where you keep finding faults with the others, keep finding faults with your own self, not allow yourself any liberties, not allow yourself any pleasure, not allow yourself any illogic. You have to remain within the frame, within the jail of the super ego, which always keeps judging you. That judging part is a very significant part within our own selves that we need to know, that we need to recognize. A part that does not allow, a part that generates fright by its posturing. You posture to yourself, how did you do this? How can you do this? This, when you posture yourself like this, you know that that's the part which is a principal part here in action. So ego is like a man on the horseback who is trying to check the superior strength of the horse. And in all therapy, the aim is how to increase this adult analytical self who can play a very interesting role to bring some sense to this id and super ego conflict. All therapies aim at bringing this balance, whether they know or they don't know. So what is the superego is the purveyor of rewards, feeling of pride and satisfaction, and punishments. Depending upon which part of ego deal is activated, forbids sex and aggression for sure. Superego is a part of unconscious. That is the voice of the conscience. Conscience means doing right. Doing what is right and not doing right is a source of criticism. You can see this posture very typically shows what is an id and what is a superego. This is our day-to-day life. You will feel this is not me. That is why I kept this picture here. Every parent today comes and says that my child is all the time on the screen. Other side is you do well, thumbs up, you're doing a good job. So it is worth looking at your obsession with perfection. I would call it compulsive perfection. It has been researched thoroughly that this compulsive perfection or obsession with perfection is a sign of increased vulnerability. The id is very disturbed. Then, when there is such a demand for perfection, there is a chance you will procrastinate, you will postpone things, productivity can reduce, relationships will get strained. There'll be intimacy is not possible when you are super perfect. It's just not possible because intimacy, only a id can create intimacy. Super ego cannot create any intimacy. Anxiety, depression, loss of spontaneity. This is not possible if you are a perfection. Okay, chalo, as soon as this lecture gets over, let me get to Inox and watch this movie. This spontaneity is not possible. When intimacy and spontaneity is not possible, joy cannot come. Physical health problems, not being in the now, rigid and inflexible, blaming the other, being very critical. When things go as per your idea of the right, if it doesn't go the way you want it, if it doesn't go the way you feel it is right, then you tend to blame. You create guilt in yourself and the other. As I said, human beings are guilt manufacturing company unlimited. They have perfected this art of feeling guilty. They have perfected this art of making the other feel guilty. Never good enough feeling. As Eckhart Tolle writes that one of the fundamental beliefs in human beings is not being enough in multiple ways. So inflexible, excessive high standards. Research has shown that perfectionism is a weakness. Self-oriented perfection, it can be the other-oriented perfection or it can be social-oriented perfection. What is important is that to be perfect is fine. But to be compulsively all the time perfect, to be obsessively perfect, it takes your spontaneity away. And that is what, when the child is all the time told that you are great and you are the master and you've done so well, and he's not criticized at all. He said, you are the Suraj, you are the Chand, you are the everything that can be possible. There is nothing you can ever do wrong. You are the most brilliant child. You are the child who can never go wrong. And such a child will develop what is called as megalomania. He will start feeling greater than his parents, and he will kind of dictate the parent what has to be done, and will be insensitive to the, the pain and suffering of the other. Becomes very self-oriented, narcissistic personality. So-called overconfident personality, selfish, pompous. And the other polarity is that you have to succumb to be perfect. You are all the time stressed. Are you living up to the expectations or are you not living up to the expectations? This is the thought process of most human beings. Observe the areas and feelings that make you feel guilty. What is it? What words does your mind broadcast? I did wrong. I did not do this right. I don't deserve this. I am not correct. Again, I made a mistake. This should not be like this. Why did I do this? It should have been like this. But I missed the train. But I missed the boat. But I did this wrong. But I could have done this better. But I should have done this better. And then, why did I have to tell this to that person? Why did I have to do this? Why I made this mistake, that mistake? This part of your mind which keeps broadcasting this. Get the words, write down those words. If not now, later on. These two things you want to do, what you make the other feel guilty, and when you feel guilty, what is this broadcasting station broadcasting? You have sinned, you are lazy, you are rude, you are strict, you are insensitive, you are not doing your duty. All this self-blame broadcasting corporation that is there inside. Recognize this broadcasting corporation. Because we want to know how this has come up, you see. Here I want to pay a tribute to Jane Roberts, May 8, 1929 to September 5, 1984. She has written some wonderful books. She was a channel and she's written books which are called Seth Speaks, S-E-T-H, Seth Speaks. And she's channeled this person called Seth. It's her imaginary person. And incredible wisdom has been downloaded in her books. One of the books is Nature of Your Personal Reality or Nature of Your Personality. This lecture draws inspiration from her work, but with a more integrated wisdom from my practice and from general viewpoint. So when you look at this part of yours, this tendency of yours to feel guilty, you feel you have no choice. We are locked in this pattern of how this bombardment comes from the super ego, and this id gets more and more dissatisfied, lacks confidence, feels guilt, fright, shame. So this keeps on coming. Sometimes we are able to level and say, okay, this is permissible. So Seth speaks, cat eats mouse, then there is no guilt. And mouse eats other animals, there is no guilt. When he swallows the when he is swallowed by the cat, then the mouse leaves its body. This is innate biological, fundamental animal understanding. Now Seth says that guilt arose in human beings. The birth of guilt arose in the human beings with the birth of compassion. When you do something wrong to someone, at some point in history when human beings were evolving, guilt arose from the birth of compassion. This was very beautiful sentence. He said, this is biological and primary mission for creating compassion. Guilt is a spiritual respect It's a biological respect. It is a strong natural basis or proof for human awareness, for human awakening. Misunderstanding of this fundamental process is what has created this terror. Over generations, to say the least, this is a terror. Human being is living under a constant terrorized, demonized state. Man started manipulating into demons. As soon as guilt was experienced by the humans, the fundamentalist tendencies created a devil. This is what Sate speaks. Guilt creates antibodies at cellular level, and it disables or it kills the red blood cells and also creates mental antibodies. So this feeling of guilt was in human history was used to terrorize, demonize, to create, to manipulate, to make the other do what he intends to do. So there comes this demon. Sunilji, I will answer your question later. If you can remind me later on, Sunilji, I'll be very happy to answer your question. So this demonize, this empower, create guilt and fear, and eliminate the adult. Terrorize the id. You will see this particular energy in all areas of your life, even in the year 2024. Because if guilt and fear are created, you can make that person powerless. Over a period of time, human beings have been made to experience powerlessness. That there are the elite and the powerful, and there are less helpless and the powerless. The perpetrators, victims, you can say. The powerful and the praja or the general Aam Aadmi. Guilt serves a purpose, which has now been manipulated. Over a long period of time, the human mind, the big human mind, I call it as the fourth dimension, the collective unconscious, has programmed itself. And this entity of guilt has taken a huge proportion. And its fundamental biological meaning has been lost. This is what Sate speaks. Very inspiring reading this. So, suppressed aggression in the id expresses and it explodes in wrong reasons, misplaced reactions. Opposite person cannot understand the anger. So the opposite person cannot understand the anger, and the id performs all kinds of irrational things to fulfill its pleasure. More and more it gets distorted, and more the parent or that guilt causing entity, the demon, gets this heavy distortion. This is what has happened over a period of time in our heads. This demonic, scary broadcaster and this id, which is an illogical, just is seeking for pleasure, are in direct conflict. And then you carry feelings of unworthiness forever. So Seth very beautifully speaks there through Jane Roberts that there is an unnatural guilt. He calls this unnatural guilt, I have used the word distorted, and natural guilt, which is an ancient wisdom. It was a very beautiful, very inspiring uh, 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 downloads by Jane Roberts. So what is this unnatural guilt which is distorted, which is this natural guilt and ancient wisdom? So this unnatural, distorted one is like this demon. It is so demonic that it will, even if you don't want to do something, you will have to do it. This is the entity that has manipulated the human psyche, and the human psyche has learned to manipulate, has learned to make the other feel guilty, is hardwired not to allow pleasure in a adult way. That adult part is completely suppressed because this superego is so heavily programmed with right and wrong that now you have even forgotten to ask yourself whether this is right or wrong, whether I can do it or not, because everything is so heavily programmed, right from what you wear to what you eat to where you go to whom you meet. Everything is fixed and programmed for you that this is the parameter within which you can live your life. And this has happened over a period of time that the human being has got more and more and more narrower, more and more fixed. And as we get more and more fixed, big mass of people will feel will feel powerless. As more and more people feel powerless, or they don't have a right to what they would like to do, certain opinions are all forced on you. Media also plays a very big role and washes people's brains. So my choice is something which has become a very antique uh, entity or antique. It is thing of the past. The unnatural guilt is demonic. It seeks to terrorize, to punish, to manipulate. It can be toxic. It installs a lot of fear. Unnatural guilt is forced by memory. The collective unconscious, this big human mind, which we are a small part of, we are just living that big human mind in some way through resonance, is full of unintegrated consequences. We have no idea about what kind of consequences we are imagining. Humans relive the same story. The same inner resonance attracts same reality. We walk the same path of unconscious loyalty to a certain painful phenomena. We are forced into this unconscious loyalty to misery. Unnatural guilt is archetypal. It is how it was for my parent and my grandparent and my great grandparent and my great great grandparent, and in my past lives and in all our ancestors beyond our imagination. Hatred, violence, wars, self-sabotage result from unnatural guilt. Cause and effect. exist only in the third dimension zone. It suppresses your vital essence, this unnatural guilt. It takes away your childlike creativity. Yeah, every word I say is from Sage Speaks, and every word I read and meditated as I was reading is transforming. Meditation is not just about closing eyes. Natural guilt, very beautifully described by Jane Roberts through Sage's wisdom, is a conscious corporeal sense of justice. Natural guilt is a preventive in nature. Reflection is a conscious attribute of an awakened human mind. To reflect is our virtue, but that virtue has been distorted. Natural guilt projects a man into future. Okay, I have done this. I have compassion for this. I understand, when reading this chapter, I could understand so many things about my own self, as how these parts of what had happened in my life, I could not integrate or accept, because there was a big guilt element in there. When you understand that this natural guilt is going to project a future which is guided by compassion, because that was the real uh, purpose of the guilt to come. Guilt and compassion came together. Guilt is that sensitivity. And he says the guilt is wise. It is a very wise guide. It brings biological integrity. Biological integrity means real, true care for our species. Today, the guilt has become a source for big manipulation by this demonic force. It does not have a biological integrity because it has lost this. The fourth dimension is so heavily programmed, the collective consciousness. What has happened to our purvaj, our ancestors, is the same thing what we are experiencing. We have a loyalty to that same demonic way of thinking. We distort our own id with a lot of guilt. Shed says guilt is an opening of reflection. It is widening of consciousness. Today, what the guilt does is contracts you. Reading this chapter and understanding what has happened to my life, what had happened in my life, what were some incidences, some phenomena that happened in my life, brought a perspective. Brought a perspective of opening this reflection, and suddenly my consciousness opened. I started having space for my own self, because this is reframed in a higher context. Natural guilt does not involve penance. It does not involve you have to undergo some penance. What is in Hindi penance? Some kind of punishment or some kind of act of purification. It is a reminder. It is a precautionary in nature, biologically. A group of multiple selves are there in you, integrated as one soul. There are so many parts of your being. That's what it says. It's like a group of cells that form an organ. Like this, you are a multifaceted human being. Like a group, we are kind of frozen into guilt, or into one or very few selves that are there within. We have within us beautiful multiple selves. that need to be brought to our awareness, which have been kind of pushed down, which need to surface, which need manifestation. Your greater infinite self has been distortfully manipulated and into the grip of this demonic guilt, which is a distorted phenomena to make you feel powerless. And your feeling powerless is 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 uh, is beneficial for a few. And there are a few who call the shots for the whole world. And we want to, friends, connect with this, our ultimately our infinite self with multiple possibilities. We can expand in multiple directions, multiple dimensions. You are a full of possibility, multidimensional, multidirectional being. Thinking out of the box is what is needed. So, friends, be aware of every word, every action in your life is written in the memory of the universe. When you say something, you will learn that not only whatever you are saying parroting this distorted, unnatural guilt. Note this guilt is a part, only one part of your greater whole that is out of sync and is heavily prejudiced by these demonic beliefs that influence your reality. Natural guilt is a door to expanding your consciousness. When this guilt undergoes transformation, reframing, repositioning, realigning, reconfiguration, then it will allow you only to expand because it brings such deep sense of compassion. We want to expand. The demonic guilt wants you to contract. And the adult is absent. Because the superego is so strong, does not permit the id to be. And the tendencies of the id are also coming from generations. The tendencies of the superego are coming from the generations. And this whole patterning is one generation after the other. We are not able to break this loyalty to this misery. This is what Shade speaks. So friends, we are going to do this process today, a very simple process that has come to my consciousness is 3 layers of consciousness is the process that we will do today. So the first layer of consciousness is what is the outer layer, which we can call as protection. What we show to the outside world. How we tend to act day to day. It is shielded, it is covered, it is masked, it is like a zombie. So there is one layer outside, which is a protective layer. a mask, mukhauta. Inside that mukhauta lies all the feelings of vulnerability. Vulnerability is very natural to human beings. It is a virtue. I forget the name of the author. She has written a beautiful book on vulnerability. Pardon me, I don't remember her name just now. But vulnerability is a strength. When there is vulnerability, and when there is breach of trust, then it will cause fear, guilt, and shame. But when the same vulnerability is associated with trust, then it is soft, receptive experience of bliss. And last is that inner core. When you reach your inner core, when you reach the field of your heart, and when you reach that field of your heart, then there is spontaneous expansion of the heart field. Because what it then brings is a lot of compassion. That is the place from where you can change your DNA. That is the place from where you can create a new reality. So friends, we are going to go through these 3 layers, meditation into 3 layers of consciousness. Please allow 15 minutes more today, friends, to complete our process and have some sharing. So again, the first layer is the mask. The second layer is that vulnerable. And the third layer is your core, your inner core, is your core being. It's the field of your heart. It's your true being. It's the essence. It's what you can say as expansion of your consciousness, like you saw here. It's like this one, right? It's expanding. It's allowing a new formula to emerge. This id, ego, super ego is only an analysis. It's not the higher truth. The higher truth is that we can reframe this. We need not be loyal to this arrangement, which has not been created by you. So friends, you can close your eyes, take some deep breaths. Every breath take you higher. Let every breath connect to prana, to your essence. To allow yourself quietly want relax your slowly gather expansion of our that soul is destined to experience, allowing to be true to your experience today. Let this working outer fear of mask, outer that carry as a face. When we interact, when we live our day-to-day life, what is that outer superficial layer in all its forms. Everything from one place to another. Interacting, transacting, day-to-day shores of how we manage to detect ourselves, hide our limits, we will be true to ourselves. Keep biologically active. Keep biologically sink into that second layer of fire or change. Makes a seed or place from where you seek illogical pleasure. Allow your consciousness higher biology. Trust whatever occasions, thoughts, feelings, images show up. pride of you. Feel that love. How you feel connection to the feeling of your heart in of the universe. मुझे इस वक्त नहीं मुझे for giving space to it for the one I space to spiral create that healthy height and foundation. House the love of house. This many petals. And these are your public albums. I how time is making feel personal. As you move into having the powerful mind, having the means to having the creativity to function, having more spirituals, tell you this, you cannot, I cannot do it. But now you conscious, your pure consciousness, minus the mind in I walk, feeling out. It is my soul, spirit of the life force. Attention deep breath. Healing. Is the universe. Where is the faith? Wonderful, friends. Anybody would like to share their process? Would like to share their experience of this session? Yes, Shubhaji, you can unmute.
Uh, Thank you, sir. Sir, the meditation process, we could not hear your voice at all. So we were
Okay,
just hearing the music actually
okay, I
throughout.
just not aware. I should have been told about it. Okay,
So we just could meditate, but we couldn't hear anything at all. So
okay. I kind of apologize for this, but I think somebody should have pointed it out to me at that time. Okay, but
we didn't want to disturb the whole thing. So we didn't
okay,
know how to get to you. We messaged on the chat.
okay.
Okay.
Because I was also in a deep state of meditation.
Yes, yeah, that's what we didn't want to disturb you then. So
Yeah, okay, okay. Thank you for this feedback. It's surprising because we had checked the sound and my sound over the music, and it was okay when we checked it before the session. Anybody would like to share anything, any insights that you got out of this? Even the talk. Maybe you meditated for some time with the music, doesn't matter. Anybody could go through the layers of consciousness. Or in general, what did you get from the talk? Yes, Thoral, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, so basically, uh, even I could not hear what the words were, but I felt like I was sleeping. But the fact that I was aware that I'm sleeping was the fact that I was not sleeping, right? But I was rocking back and forth, and I don't know if the words you were saying were gravitate in any way, but I felt like maybe it was, maybe I could hear it in some other manner and I was reacting to it in that way. So I don't know. And mom also had the same experience where I don't know if she can say that she was sleeping or not, but she was also rocking. So I don't know what it means.
Hey Jayesh, bhai, I actually felt that I was dozing off. I kept on doing this.
Okay.
I could not hear anything, but I'm feeling very good. Like I could feel vibrations in my head,
Mm-hmm.
strong vibrations. So my eyelids were very heavy since yesterday. I'm feeling much better.
Mm-hmm.
And about the lecture, I would say that guilt, since I've done few sessions with you on guilt and all those things, I don't feel guilting myself most of the times about doing something. But yes, I do make people feel guilty about a lot of things. And like you said, right, wrong. Like I have gone through that process. My right and wrongs have reduced a lot. But still, while listening to you, I realize how many times I keep saying, this is right, that person is wrong, he's doing this, he should have done this. So that made me self aware about things which I need to think and look towards changing that.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I would just like to cross check once. Say, if I am sharing this sound and if I'm speaking on it, am I audible? Can we check it once again just for my sake? Okay,
Yes.
give me a feedback. Hello, allow yourself to just relax. Relax yourself. relax yourself completely. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
It's a little bit broken.
Huh?
Ebbing and flowing with
Now, say for example, now, hello, allow yourself to just relax. Relax yourself completely. Are you able to hear me? Could you hear me?
This broken voice completely.
Broken words.
But you could hear much better than before. I mean, the earlier you couldn't hear at all.
Okay, okay. I don't know what could be the reason because I conduct this almost every day, you know. Doesn't matter. That's the way it was meant to be.
Sir, everything looks like everything is in autopilot mode. Means like every reactions and actions
Okay.
are.
Can you just raise your hand so that I know who is talking? Yes, can you please tell me who was speaking? If you raise your hand, then we know clearly who was speaking.
Sir, I'm Mehul, Dr. Mehul Sanghi.
हाँ Mehul bhai bolo. Yeah.
Everything is like what is happening around, and everything is like in autopilot mode. Means you can't do anything. This everything is just in that phase.
Mm-hmm.
Like a super ego is controlling, or my id is there, but there is no way that you can uh, fine tune that thing or something like that.
Yes, that's the feeling of powerlessness or hopelessness, that it is not possible for us to make any change. It is as if, you know, there is a whole kind of a collective consciousness, and we are so heavily programmed that we cannot really have any control over this, because there are certain resonances within us, certain frequencies within us that draw the same reality again and again. And how this whole fourth dimension is configured, we tend to download the same experience as if we are manipulated into being in a certain way, as if our choices are taken away.
Yeah.
This is a very common phenomena.
Mhm. How to overcome this thing, like means processes which are we are doing, but still we are at the square one only. Means like,
Yes,
in that,
it is. One has to be constantly under this process. And one of the things that is spontaneously coming to my mind in this moment, it is not something which I had planned to say, but I would say that one good way to bring yourself into the center is chanting. Like chanting the chakras would be very, very powerful. If you can get 25 minutes of chanting one chakra on every day, then 6 days you chant the six chakras, and the seventh day you chant Om for 20 to 25 minutes, that this chanting resonance is very powerful.
okay, sir.
So you can look online and find out some chants of the chakras. They are 23 to 25 minutes. This chant would be appropriate.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Shubhaji.
Yes, so wanted to know, like, how do you break out of this vicious cycle of, feeling guilty and blaming yourself, and how do you get out of that?
Again, I would say that constant inner work is what is needed. But one of the simplest ways is to chant.
Okay.
You do it one day and you will see the change.
So which chakra do we start with?
Start, if you start on Monday, then Monday start with root chakra.
Root chakra, and then go ahead like
Sixth
that.
day you chant, Saturday you finish with the third eye, and Sunday you chant the Om.
Okay, right.
If you don't want to do the chakras, chant anything. Just chant with the tanpura for half an hour.
Right. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Chant your Gayatri mantra, you can chant
Awesome.
anything.
Oh,
But
okay.
chakras I found very powerful because it takes your mind away. Because all other chants you will have some meaning attached to it. Then your mind gets activated because you have given a meaning to uh, that chant. Chakras allow you to go beyond that. After few chants, you won't even know what is the meaning of this sound. But the sound dimension is very powerful dimension. It is the sound that creates everything. That created everything in the first place. All geometry came from the sound. The sound is resonance. And on the basis of that resonance, a pattern keep developing. So sound is something, if you get the right resonating sounds, which you constantly chant, you will be able to help yourself. I'm giving you an easier tip, than to go through therapies with therapists like me. Ji, Vinita ji, Suraj ji, please.
Doctor, when we started the process, Doctor, as you were explaining us the theory, I just felt it being very unbearable to hear. Words, the demon, the guilt, and it was almost as if when Doctor will come to the solution, it was quite unbearable. But Doctor, as natural guilt word came, compassion came, I suddenly started feeling just opposite. Just the opposite. And by the time we could not hear your voice, but your presence and the music itself showed me that maybe you're trying to say that it's okay to be guilty, it's okay to mess up your life, it's okay, the mukhota is okay. And I felt very calm. And but while the theory was on, Doctor, it was quite unbearable too.
Yes, but that is how the world has become, na Suraj ji? Look at the unbearability of things that are there around us. Our realities are getting more and more narrower, not really expanding with the things that are happening in the world. It is a very interesting situation that we all are in, where the planet Earth is going with this very strong super ego state, which are heavily compressing and pushing down, uh, not allowing this. So sound dimension is one which can really allow this. That's why I'm into this, creating this sound, particular chants which are non-spiritual, non-religious, but still they are very powerful. Anybody else would like to say something? Wonderful, friends. Next time we will make sure that the sound and the music is properly tuned, and accept my apologies for not checking this. But just being with you all was a pleasure.